Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Beth Carpenter, and I'm a meteorologist. I also went to Yorktown, so I was just where you guys were about, probably 15 or 20 years ago now. And I remember when I learned about clouds and storms when I was your age, too. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about the cloud types and meteorology education and what you can do now if you are interested in studying the weather like I did when I went to Ball State University. So a little bit about me before we get going first. I've not done this presentation format before, so bear with me here. Because of the coronavirus, obviously we couldn't come in and talk to your class, but we still wanted to get you that information. So a little bit about me. I'm from Indiana. I went to Yorktown High School, or Yorktown Elementary School too, like I said. And then I went to Ball State University where I studied the weather. I studied meteorology and climatology. So in general, that just means that I studied the weather, and I'm now a meteorologist, and I own my own company. I do private weather forecasting, so we forecast the weather when you're playing outside, baseball tournaments and stuff like that, if you're going to fairs and snow removal companies, golf courses. So you can do a lot with meteorology, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second as well. I also do storm chasing. I've been storm chasing for 6 years now. I've seen 27 tornadoes, and I've got a couple of my pictures in here as well. I think that my video frame down here is covering one of them, but you can see some of the pictures I've taken over here from some of my storm chasing trips. And then at the end of all of this, we're also going to have a storm chasing video for you after meteorologist Joseph Cooper's presentation, which is kind of part 2 of this little series. So we'll go ahead and first start talking about meteorology education. So like I said, I went to Yorktown, and then I went to Ball State University. And I actually want to skip ahead here to the next slide. I took my classes on campus at Ball State. So you can do on-campus learning or you can do online learning, whichever you prefer. You guys have been learning online here for about a month now. So if you like that, there's always that option for college too, not just in elementary and middle school and high school. So I went to Ball State, like I said. I got a meteorology degree there. There are a lot of different directions you can go with your meteorology degree, and we'll talk about that here on the next slide. Now, meteorologist Joseph Cooper took online meteorology courses through Mississippi State University, where he does all of his stuff on the computer. He watches slideshows, kind of like what I'm doing for you right now, and he does projects and everything just like you would on campus as well. So it's whatever kind of best fits your learning style when you get to that point. So once you finish college studying meteorology, you have a lot of different directions you can go with this. You can be on TV. I'm sure that that's what you're thinking of first thing when you hear of a weather person. You think that they're just on the TV, but they actually do a lot more than that. You can also work in airports. You can do private weather forecasting like I do. You can work for the National Weather Service. So you can be the person that issues tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings and severe thunderstorm watches and that kind of stuff. You can work in emergency management, so you see the people sometimes after bad weather comes through that wear the bright like yellow and orange vests, and they're making sure everybody's okay. You can be one of those people as well. You can do research in weather and learn more about it and kind of develop new things. You can teach weather, whether that's in schools like high school, middle schools, or even at the college level. And you can also be a hydrologist, which means you study kind of the water and flooding and all of that. So a lot of different directions you can do here. I've taken some pictures off of some of these I took when I interned at the National Weather Service. This is kind of their setup here. I also interned at Fox 59 when I was in high school. Internships are really good for starting to get experience in the field of meteorology, so I highly recommend that when you get into high school and college, working with somebody that's already in the field. So this is somebody that I worked with when I was in high school, and these are a couple of my my professors from Ball State. Anyway, and this is a hydrologist here out in the water. So a lot of different directions you can go with this, so many options. You don't have to just be the person on TV. I thought that that's what I initially wanted to do, and later decided it wasn't. So you can always change your path too once you get started, exactly which kind of direction you want to go with things. So now that we've talked about careers in meteorology, I know that that seems like it's really far down the road for you guys. since you're just in elementary school now, but it's going to come quick, I promise. But what you can do now is start taking as many math and science classes as you can once you get into middle school and high school, and read a lot of weather books right now. You'll learn a lot. It might not seem like, you're learning a lot of the tougher stuff, but the good base foundation, a good education of the basics are what you really need to succeed. So start reading those weather books that you can right now. You can go outside and observe the weather when any storms are coming through. Sorry, I'm dog sitting for the summer here, a sled dog, and he's coming up to me now. It's a new thing for me too. Anyway, you can also watch the weather person on TV. That you'll learn a lot from that. You'll be watching like weather fronts coming in and learning about all of those. And then you can get involved in your local weather community when you get older and make connections. So you can, like I said, meet the people on your local TV stations. You can join clubs. And maybe even start storm chasing like I did, once you get into high school and college. But you need to go with somebody who knows what they're doing. Don't just go out the door one day and start storm chasing. So anyway, I'll take as many math and science classes as you can before you graduate high school. So that means when you pick classes in middle school and high school, take extra math and science, because it's really going to help you when you get to college. So now that we've talked about what you can do now and a little bit about meteorology education, we're going to start off by talking about some clouds. So cloud types are some of the most basic or the most important things in meteorology to learn. So clouds form when warm, moist air rises into the atmosphere. So you've always heard that warm air rises, cold air sinks. That's why when you do fire drills and stuff, they hear you, stay low to the ground, because that hot air is going to rise and the cooler air is going to sink to the ground, so you won't be as hot. So we have that warm, moist air rising into the atmosphere, and eventually the temperatures up there get so cold that the moisture condenses into little water droplets, little liquid water droplets, or sometimes ice, depending on how high that rises up into the air. And they get stuck on little particles that are already floating in the air. These are called aerosols or particulates. Just kind of little floating pieces that aren't heavy enough to fall to the ground, and they just kind of float in the air all the time. You can't see them or feel them, but they're there. So these tiny little water droplets stick onto these little floating pieces in the atmosphere, and eventually those build together and build clouds. And they can, grow, depending on the type of cloud and the environment. They'll either stay the same size that they are, or they'll grow bigger and bigger. And there are four main types of clouds that we're going to talk about today. There are high clouds, middle clouds, low clouds, and vertical clouds. So I'm going to break those down for you here. And then in the next kind of part of this, meteorologist Joseph Cooper is going to tell us how these form into storms and eventually into severe weather. And then he's going to talk to you a little bit about storm chasing as well. So we'll go ahead and talk about cloud types here. The first cloud type that we're going to talk about are low clouds. So these are going to be the closest to the ground. You can see in this little diagram that I have off to the side here, the grass is the green part here, or the ground I should say, and just above that we see some lower clouds developing. These are called stratus clouds and cumulus clouds, and they're usually pretty thick, and they have gray on the bottom of them, and they're made of just liquid water droplets. So it doesn't rise too far into the air, so it stays a bit warmer, and they stay as liquid. So it's a pretty moist cloud. Again, low clouds, they're usually pretty thick. They're the ones that we usually have in place when we have really cloudy skies, because they don't let very much light through. Next comes the mid-level clouds. These all have a prefix, or the beginning of the cloud. It starts with alto. So that's a pretty easy way to remember which ones they are. They're always white and puffy clouds. Sometimes they have a little bit of gray on the bottom, but usually they're pretty white and puffy. And then sometimes they also grow into rain showers. These aren't going to be clouds that form into storms or anything, just a light little rain shower, maybe in the afternoon or something like that, but not really a big threat of any kind. And then we have lastly, or second to last I should say, are high clouds. These all begin with cirro in the name. You can see cirro or cirrus here in these names, or cirrocumulus as well. I've kind of used these little boxes to mark off where the low, middle, and high level clouds are located in the atmosphere. So these clouds are going to be very white as well. And the reason that they're more white in color than gray is because temperatures are so cold at that level in the atmosphere that instead of these clouds being made of liquid, that moisture freezes and they're made of little ice crystals. So that's why they're pretty white and sometimes shiny, bright in color. Some of these also look pretty wispy. They're all really thin clouds up there. They're not very thick. They're not going to be blocking the sun totally. So you see these a lot on fair weather days, meaning days that we have a lot of sunshine out there. You're going to be seeing these little white puffy clouds. They're not going to do anything. They're going to stay pretty small. You know, you still see a lot of sunshine and have a nice day. So that's the last level of clouds. And then we also have a cloud type called vertical. Vertical clouds are those that grow up into the atmosphere. So they start at the low levels near the ground and they grow really high up into the atmosphere. You can see that here on the side of this diagram. That's called a cumulonimbus cloud, and that's the vertical cloud. You can see that it starts here pretty near the surface and grows all the way up to the top of this picture here, which is at the top of the atmosphere. So the cumulonimbus cloud will start growing sort of near the surface, and as it matures and as time passes and it continues to grow, it gets higher and higher up in the atmosphere. The bottom of the cloud is going to be made of liquids, and the top of the cloud is still going to be made of ice, just like the other cloud types. So sometimes these end up developing into thunderstorms under certain conditions that meteorologist Joseph Cooper is going to be talking to you about here in the next part of this lesson. And then once it does get into the really big clouds, they can produce damaging winds and hail, lots of lightning, and even tornadoes too. So you'll learn more about that in just a second. But that's all I'm going to teach you here about the cloud types. We want to keep it pretty basic so you can understand them. What we want you to do now is, if you want to go outside and try to identify the types of clouds, I know that that's what we did when I was in elementary school. We had to keep kind of like a cloud chart of what we saw outside. So that would be helpful if you're, you know, while you can't really do anything else right now, go outside, observe the clouds, and see what kind of cloud types you have around you. I'm going to turn it over to meteorologist Joseph Cooper now to talk to you about how storms develop, how they become severe, and then he's going to also talk to you a little bit about storm chasing, and we have a storm chasing video of some of our footage and pictures for you to look at as well. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I think your teacher is going to have you guys make some of those questions or write some of them down, and we'll be more than happy to answer them from during an email or a Zoom video session that we might be doing with you guys here soon too. So make sure if you have any questions to let us know. Thanks for logging on. Everybody have a great rest of your school year.